Welcome back to Get in the Cash Flow Game with K&K, where we talk about investing in real estate, cash flow, building wealth, and all the lessons we learned along the way. And if you can, do me a huge favor, please like and subscribe this podcast, share it with your friends and family. That way we can continue to bring you value every week and get bigger and better guests on the show. We've been working on this for the past few months. You know we always want to bring as much value as we possibly can, and our partner, Prime Corporate Services, is all about bringing you a service you can't get anywhere else at a price you can't get anywhere else. Whether you're new to owning a business or owning a property, or you're an experienced property owner or investor, Prime Corporate Services is not only going to help you, but they're going to make the process so much easier. So if you book a call, the first thing they're going to do for you is help you understand what your business structure should look like, your corporate structure, tax planning, estate planning, all of that. Maybe you're saying, I'm brand new to starting a business and all this sounds foreign and complicated. Remember, this company helps new people just getting started every day. They're going to help you form the entity that's best for you and walk you through the process. Before I found this company, we paid thousands of dollars to other attorneys, CPAs, and consultants to try to understand exactly how we need to be structured to be as protected as possible. We've also gone the other route and used online platforms to form entities which unnecessarily put us at risk. You guys, you don't have to do that with this company. They'll do all of these things for you at a reasonable price, so you never have to think about saving money at the expense of exposing yourself to liability. We've searched high and low, and you will not find this much value anywhere else. All you have to do is schedule a free call today. Just go to primecorporateservices.info/GITCG. Once again, that's primecorporateservices.info/GITCG. We'll also leave the info for you in the show notes. Thanks for coming on, Codie. I am so excited to talk to you because you're like this badass boss lady that's like done all these amazing things, and you're just like killing it in your space. And I feel like it's something that a lot of people are super insecure about. Like even for me, like the thought of buying a business or investing in a business, I'm like, I don't know how to do that because you have to rely on people, right? And so that for me has always been like the biggest thing. So can you just tell us how you got here, how you started, a little bit of your story?
Yeah, of course. Well, thanks for having me. I was a traditional Wall Streeter for a long time. So did the whole, private equity, asset management, investing other people's money and doing really big deals. And I think I did that for 12 or 15 years until I realized, wow, I am making a lot of money for other people doing deals. And my percentage of the take home is way too small. And so I'm finding the deal. I'm underwriting the deal or analyzing it to make sure it's good to go. I'm doing the structuring, negotiation, closing the deal. I'm even working on the transition plan or a turnaround plan, and I'm getting like a couple $100K a year. What's going on?
Yeah.
And then at one point I was like, well, I'm too scared to leave my finance thing because, I was younger at the time. So I was making, I don't know, let's assume I was making like $500K a year or something like that. And so that was a lot of money. I was like, how am I going to replace this? There's no way. OnlyFans didn't exist then. So that wasn't an option, but like there was no path to 500K. So I was like, well, what if I just do these deals on a smaller basis? So instead of doing my $150 million buyout of a, retail franchise, what if I go and I buy a laundromat and I buy a small one? And that starts to give me cash flow. And then I could layer on a few more. And I guess if I did like 3 to 5 deals, I could get to 500K in net profit a year. And that wouldn't be too awful. And so I did a few of those. I realized it was possible. And I probably did 2 small of deals to start with because I was nervous even after having done this for years. And then I slowly scaled that up to a point where I was like, my FU fund's pretty big. I don't need to wait around for these guys anymore.
Awesome. And you own what, like 50 plus businesses now or something?
We own 24 businesses. Okay. They do more than 50 million in annual revenue. And quite honestly, like we don't optimize them much. Like everybody will always say, so what you do is you buy the business and then it's like this, and then you do this overhaul with it and you turn the business into this really profitable one. And I actually don't do that. I buy businesses by and large, and they're like bonds. They just kind of cash flow. It would be very hard for me to turn one of my laundromats into a $3 million laundromat. Like we have one that does that, but you can't do that with all of them. And so most of these things are like nice little cash businesses. Then the interesting part is for me, even today, I was talking with one of my mentors in investing about portfolio structure. And I think I have to start leveling up to the next level. So not doing, it's probably the same in real estate. People are like, I have 500 doors. And you're like, yeah, but what door, bro? Like, is that a good door? Like your door's $100,000 door that you make $200 a month. Like, I don't want that door. And so, I think that's what happens in buying businesses too. And I'm now at a point where like, I can't buy any more laundromats unless it's for content and fun because they're too little to be material to the outcome. So I've even got to restructure what I'm doing now.
And you mentioned mentor. Who are your mentors?
Well, I sort of like having mentors for lots of different things. So I have one mentor. I mean, I don't know. The word mentor also freaks me out. I find that there's a lot of, when I say it out loud for them, or when somebody asks me to be a mentor, I'm sure when they ask you, there's a lot of weight that comes to that. It's like, you're going to guide my life. I don't know. Maybe you should pick somebody else for that. But I will say the people that have guided me in a big way are, I have somebody for fitness. Her name's Claire. She's helping me prioritize that. For investing, I usually want to go with, there's like 3 levels. I go with somebody who's at my level right now. So we're both kind of like growing together. We're building our portfolios at the same basis. Right now, that's a guy by the name of Ramin Sheth. We both have these like 50 million rev portfolios, kind of figuring out what's next. Then I usually have a mentor that's a young gun, somebody newer or younger than me in it, because I just see a totally different perspective. That might be like Layla and Alex Hormozy right now.
Yep.
They're like younger, building up a portfolio for the first time. Yeah. But they're doing it in a totally different way. And then on the high end, I like to have somebody that's like, man, I wish I could get there. And that for me is probably one of my old partners from Goldman, who now runs a multi-billion-dollar private equity portfolio.
Nice. I like that. That's cool. So that's a good mix.
I love to hear that, because I think like so many people, it's crazy to me because so often I talk to people and they're like, what's a mastermind? I've never heard of that.
Yeah.
And so it's crazy to me. It's just great to hear someone who's had success to reiterate the point that we have coaches for everything in our lives. Like, you have a coach for your relationship, you have a coach for your fitness, a coach for growing your business, investing in your business. Like, there are different people that serve different purposes. And I think also the word mentor for some people feels like you're the lucky one that you found a mentor because they didn't have anybody like that in their life. So I always say like, Robert Kiyosaki could be your mentor and he never knew it. Like, there's people that can be your mentor that you can learn from, and they don't necessarily know that, but they give you a lot of valuable information that guides you, in some of your decisions that you make in your life.
That's so true. I think the whole mastermind thing is fascinating, because if you would have asked me 3 years ago, before I was on the internet at all, if I wanted to join a mastermind, I probably would have turned up my nose a little bit and said like, am I going to be like 10x crossing my arms all over the place and jumping on a jet? I wouldn't have liked that.
That's awesome.
And then, but when I started using them, what a silly ego I had, because I thought I knew it all and I just didn't really understand the value in stealing somebody else's 10,000 hours. So I guess it's still good that there's a lot of people that are like, people selling courses, people selling communities. It's like, buddy, fine, you stay out because we're going to steal everybody else's homework and you get to figure it out yourself. No problem.
Yeah. I always tell Krystle, it's like it's a mentor, it's a coach. It's like, you're paying for their 10,000 hours, or they went out and they spent $1 gazillion on coaching and time to learn it. And they're like, look, I'm giving you the quick from A to Z quick. You want to go quick, or you want to go beat your head against the wall and drag this out? And that's what we learned. Like, let's just get there quicker and just pay somebody.
100%.
Oh, will you pay people? You're like, yeah, what is the big deal? Like, I don't understand. It was a big deal because we literally never did masterminds, never did anything. We're always kind of like to ourselves, never really did social or anything. And we just kind of like, we need to kind of change it up,
How did you realize that? Was there a trigger point where you realized, oh no, actually I am going to pay for this?
The first one was actually Avengers. It was about 100 mil, Dan Fleischman. So I just saw this and and I'm knowing Kent Clothier. And so I said, okay, let's do this. But I was just kind of like, I love people here in my life, but I'm like, I need to get around different people that think differently, because I'm a little bit different. And I know, like, on your website, you said like you don't draw inside the lines. Well, number one, I can't even fit inside the lines because I'm like nothing in my life. So I'm like that. So I'm like, this isn't working. So when I did that, I think I inspired a lot of people around me because they saw the change and the difference. And it's honestly just conversations, and you limit yourself. Like you said, I can't leave a job that's $500,000 a year. What am I, crazy? And now you're thinking like, what took so long to leave the job? We have this 100%. Limiting belief because we don't think we can make. You hear people go, you make that much money, and you're like, you come back, you're like, really, what is the difference from them and me? The difference is they just did it, and we're talking about it. I don't know. So I
Yeah,
think
I
it
think you're
motivates
exactly
you to
right.
do things. And when you see people do stuff, you're like, if that guy can do it, I can.
And oddly, there's not very many people I've met where I thought, oh, that guy has a different gear. No chance I'm going to be able to do that. There's definitely been a few. The horsepower, the mental horsepower in Austin these days is really interesting. My husband's in defense AI.
Oh,
And so I meet some of the engineers that are building complex, data systems. And first of all, and I think they'd be cool with me saying this, like they don't speak English. Like you hang out with those guys, I'm like, oh, those are cool shoes. He's like, oh yeah, I crocheted them from hand, and then I whatever it's called, where you like you put fire to metal, and then it wraps over the whole thing. And I was like, God, that's an interesting hobby. Okay, man. And I have realized the intellectual horsepower here is sizable. That's something that I don't have. But when it comes to making money, like what you guys do and what I do, nothing that I do is rocket science. Like you do not have to be a genius to look at a P&L or a cash flow statement and see something that you like and be able to figure out how to buy a business without using a ton of cash. It's not rocket science. It's not easy, but it's pretty simple.
yeah. One of the things that's different from us to you is we didn't finish college. And obviously you went to you did college. I was like, I couldn't even gone that far. Me in college and books, it just doesn't line up. Do you think just going through school, now you look back, do you think it's made a big difference in your life? Or do you think if you started over and you didn't go to school and you're able to dive in or, lock into this mastermind, this whole thing, right? Podcasting and YouTube and all this stuff we get to learn that's easier. Do you think you would have gone down a different road?
Well, I am sort of grateful that I did it in a way, because going to college let me get this inside view into Wall Street. And there are moats around the castle.
Yeah.
They do not let people in easily. And the reason why is because the economics are incredibly lucrative. There is no faster or more aggressive way to get rich than to understand money. And so they're smart. They make sure that you have to take a bunch of tests, that there are certifications, that you have to go to undergrad, that you have to go to grad school, that you by and large have to go to a top grad school to even get to play this game of private equity. And so, they don't let many people in, and the average private equity firm is something like 25 employees. It's incredibly small. And so, I think that I'm grateful for going to Georgetown, because it was an envelope. It was a permission slip for me to get in the door. These days, there's so much online, and that didn't exist for me even like 10 or 12 years ago, where you probably don't need to go to school to get that same information. But back then, I kind of felt like you did. The hard part, I think, to say is, if I had a kid right now deciding, graduating from high school, do they go to college? Do they not go to college? My stack rank would be, can you get into a top tier, like the top 10 colleges in the country? If you can, go. The network's unbelievable, and you will get rich by association. It's masterminds on steroids with the elite of our world. Okay, fine, go. If you can't get to the top ones, and you are entrepreneurial, don't go. Take the 100K, go work for a couple startups, earn your stripes the tough way. If you aren't entrepreneurial and you have a hard time figuring out what the next step is, and you really like hierarchical systems, probably go to college, because then you could be a good analyst or you could be a good consultant. That's how I would think about it, at least.
That's a good way to think about it.
I like that. Mastermind on steroids. Never thought of that.
A lot of people talk about send my kid to private versus going to public. And I'm like, I love the ideas. Like I've talked to so many different people about this. And one of my clients has one kid in private and one kid in public. And they're like, look, they have different needs. They need different things. And I'm like, I love that thinking, because not everything is for everybody.
Oh yeah, 100%. And these days it's pretty cool. I mean, the trade schools give a lot of optionality. And, it used to be, I think, this is how a lot of people think about it. They see minimum wage jobs and they think, well, we should keep increasing the price of minimum wage. And what we actually want to do is we want to keep upskilling people to go to the next level. So trade schools are amazing, because you go in as a welder, you weld for a while, you actually probably do good. You make, I think, $76,000 on average as a welder across the country. But then you become a manager, and then you own your own welding company. And that, I think, is a more interesting route over the long term. I surely do not think we need more, social studies majors.
Yeah, exactly.
So one thing that is fascinating about you, and there's other people, I'm thinking like the Hermosian stuff, is that you didn't do any social, or I just say content, right? And then all of a sudden you guys just did it. And I don't know, I can't, cause I'm around a lot of, I call them, everybody's a character to me. Like I'm around a lot of guys that have the big brand, and like Dan, the guys he's around, obviously he's a lot of different brands and they do a lot of different things, but it's fascinating. It's some people go big, some people it takes a while, but you just exploded. And I think that's how I discovered you, because I was like, who is this person? And she's all over the place.
Seems
which
like somebody
is good.
flips a switch and then all of a sudden they're like, oh, who's Codie Sanchez? Wow.
Yeah. And there's other people we know. So I mean, that's super exciting, and then one stage, and then Krystle's telling me another girl that happened, and she's like, yesterday, she's like, and you might know who it is, I won't say anything, but she's like, I'm out, I need a break, I'm stopping everything, this is not what I want to do. We were like, holy smokes, like,
oh yeah.
And so you might know who I'm talking about. So
I think
was kind of like, when you started going from, I'm going to be a W2 Wall Street guy, and funny, Wall Street people to me, they're like antisocial, hide behind it, I don't want you to know who I am, like don't post anything, hide my net worth, to all of a sudden I'm everywhere. What made you flip that switch?
One, it's inherently something that I like to do. I was a journalist back in the day. I used to do journalism about narco trafficking and all of these like complex issues. Yeah, actually a little bit along the San Diego, Mexico border. And so I really like to write. So that was always interesting to me. And I think storytelling is really powerful. And if you think about what we actually did as like investment bankers or investment professionals, half of the game is getting people to believe your story and then part with their most precious resource, their cash, right? And so I was always out there raising funds, getting people to invest in my stuff across really different asset classes. So I was selling cannabis investments. I was selling Latin American investments. We did fixed income investing at some point. And so I got comfortable with storytelling. I just had no idea that there was this internet game of storytelling that you could do. When you're in finance, you have a couple certifications that mean that you have to be really careful about public disclosure laws, which you guys know first from syndication stuff. But essentially, I remember a boss told me, you cannot have this little cute blog I had at the time because you could move the market and we could have a securities violation. I was like, buddy, my mom and apparently you are on this. And that's about all we got. Like, I don't think we're moving any markets, but like, thanks for the vote of confidence, but I guess I'll shut it down because you pay me a lot. And so eventually I decided I was done with cannabis investing. We have a lot of exposure there. And I thought in 2020, when COVID hit, I knew the cannabis market was going to have a rough couple of years, because who's going to mandate legislation for cannabis changes in a world where we're concerned about our survival, right? Like, it just wasn't going to happen. And so I stopped investing, and then I started writing, and then I had some free time. And so I realized it was a business, and then started creating video and content around it. But it was basically at a moment in time where I just given myself some space to actually move it forward. And then, in finance, I've always believed Naval's hierarchy, which is that, you have, first you have people that get access a long time ago to labor. Like, labor was the first type of leverage. And then you had access to, like, I guess today we might call it capital, just like banks, right? Ability to raise funds. The third level would be you have access to code. That's like Bezos and, Musk and all of them. And then the fourth level is now audience, which is my words, not Naval. But I think that those previous three levels, getting people to follow you, is a permission-based type of leverage. Getting capital is a permission-based type of leverage. Getting code is a little bit permission-based because you have to know how to do it. And back in the day when they were first doing it, you had to have access to computers, which didn't exist. Audience, completely permissionless. Anybody can do it. And I thought that was going to be one of the most powerful forms of leverage anybody could use. And so I wanted to capitalize on it because I couldn't be the best in the world at getting capital. There were people richer and more powerful than I was, but I thought I might be able to be one of the best in the world at audience, capital, labor, and code integrated.
Wow.
That's a very
innovative. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah. That's that MBA that's creeping in there. People
I like frameworks.
Yeah, kind of like the guy, your husband's job in the ad. They're like, what did she just say? And then they lost her there. What? So you do a lot of content, I know, on the social stuff. Mm-hmm. So it's something that we're doing too. It's definitely, it's not easy, I think, to figure out. It is tough. Like marketing for us, we never did marketing our business, and we're like, I was like, man, marketing is tough, because it's just because you think somebody will like something, you realize they don't like something, right?
Oh yeah.
And that's like the biggest lesson. You're like, oh, like, and then you put something out, you're like, this is dumb. And then it goes viral. You're like, how in the hell? Like, I don't understand this. So how did you, I guess, what does your team consist of now? Because you all the stuff you're doing, because I'm always fascinated because we are in it. And like,
Yeah.
if you could break that down and like, how much time do you really spend doing your content?
Yeah. Well, one thing I would say is, if you right now go and look at a multifamily property, or I sent you a deal and I was like, hey guys, I think this is like a pretty good deal. You'd be able to, in what, 5 minutes say, oh God, nightmare, good deal, whatever. You have the muscle memory where reps are so natural that you have an unfair advantage because of speed to decision, right? You get a deal. In 5 minutes, you can tell key points or key missing points, and then you could take action on it. And I try to apply that framework to just about anything I do. So with content, I treat it the exact same way. When we look at putting together content or videos, we look at it from a 3-part framework. So first I look about what are we going to say? So that's like, I want to teach people how to buy a business with $0 down in 90 days. Okay, that's the what. Then I think about how are we going to say it? So I could say it like this, talking head, here's how to buy a business with $0 down in 90 days. And then I give you the explanation. Or probably a little bit more interesting, I could be standing in front of one of my businesses and then take you through it step by step from different shots. And then the third thing I think about is how do we want people to feel? So usually people are motivated by one of two things, fear or greed, right? And so that type of video is a greed-based video. It's like, I want this, I want more of this. And so I want the feeling to be like excitement and energy and fast-paced and probably kind of bright. But the opposite could be true. Here's how to buy a business in a recession when everyone else is losing money. And that video is going to feel like a little dark, a little, there's going to be a little bit harsher sounds maybe in it. And so once I started to think about content like that, it changed a lot for me. Most people just think, what am I saying? But if you add, how am I saying it? And how do I make people feel? Then I think the videos change. And then our team, I'm pretty big on building teams overall. It's probably one of the differentiators in our content business versus others is I could be building this business with widgets or, cannabis like I did previously. Like we could be building it in so many verticals. It's just the same playbook every single time. It's that you hire pros, or as Charlie Munger says, you don't get a dog and then do the barking for it. And so I hire a pro, and that pro is usually the highest pro at the highest level I can get. So like right now I'm trying to hire a head of production for everything we do with YouTube. And so we hire at the top, that person brings all of their inherent knowledge inside of it, and then they do the underlying hire. And I just like creeped my way up in our business from first hiring like a newsletter pro to hiring like an Instagram pro. And then because of how fast we're growing, people move quickly. So like, my Instagram person that was here with me originally, I've been through 4 iterations, not because they left, but because they couldn't grow fast enough with us or they took another role. And I think that's one of the differentiators is like that speed to decision and speed to movement. Once I see a ripple that kind of looks the same.
It's so funny. Podcast last night, and it was like a real estate one, of course, but they were saying, the agent was saying like the difference between when I sell a billionaire a house versus selling just like a regular person, even that makes good money, a house.
Ryan Serhant.
Yeah.
Ryan Serhant.
Like,
yeah.
It's smart though. This is interesting. Yeah.
Like the billionaire makes a decision quick. There's no like, oh, what about this? What about that? I'm not sure. It's like, yes or no, like boom, done. And like, the other people, he's like, great, now I got to work with these other people who like can't make a decision. They're not sure. They're insecure. They're uncomfortable. It's like, he has to handhold a lot more. So it's interesting. You say that speed to decision is really like the biggest differentiator.
Yeah. He basically said the guy that bought $150 million house was see it one time, let's go. And then the client wants to buy a $2.5 million. We got to go talk about it, eat lunch. He's like, oh my, it's like, can we just, he's like, but that's why billionaires, and that's why they're just quick, make decision. And time is the problem. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. They probably do a lot of pre-work too. I think one of the things that, I don't know about the real estate example, but I was just talking about it with one of my teams today we do financial Fridays. So I go through all the financials of our businesses on Fridays.
Cool.
And for one of them, they were telling me a few of the issues. They're always people issues. It's always every business, it's people issues. But I was like, well, what was the expectations when you brought on the person? And like, how fast do you get rid of a person as soon as they don't hit those expectations? And they're like, they gave me a fluffy answer of what the expectations were. And I'm like, wait a second, we have to have numerical expectations for every person we bring on board. Those get reviewed every 30, 60, 90 days. At 60 days, if they're not still hitting the notes, they get put on a performance plan until 90 days. And if at the end of that 90-day period, they're not meeting their mark on the performance plan, you say, so great to have you. Like, hope you've enjoyed it thus far, but you're not hitting it. And they should know the second that they take the job that you have 90 days to get up to speed. You don't have 90 days to exceed all goals. You have 90 days to start hitting your reasonable goals. And we do a performance review every time you don't, and you get put on a performance plan. And then 30 days after, you have a review, and another 30 days you're gone. And the reason why is because then there's no expectation. There's no unfairness to employees. They know exactly what they're getting into. And then just like those $2.5 million home buyers, they're like, oh, well, do I like the wallpaper? Do I like whatever? It's like, no. You want a house by the water in the school district, 7 bedrooms, 3, but you don't let the unnecessary things influence you. And that's, I think, the same with sort of unschooled leaders, is they're like, well, I like the guy. And then he said that he's having these personal problems and he hasn't been able to hit it because the market is like, no, numbers, see you later, bye. And that's it.
I love that perspective.
Yeah, that's good.
I'm always like, in our little world here, I'm the quick one to be like, not working out, let's get going. And then he's like, but
yeah, that's me. You're like, you're pointing at me. You're like, Kenny, yeah, I'm talking to you. I'm like, man,
like, this is business.
And I knew I was going to get that when I asked her too. Yeah. I mean, it's hard because that's the thing. What's fascinating too is that's what's got you next is you're doing all this stuff. But one of the things in the mastermind, I would say for everybody, I don't care what level is, there's always somebody at the next level is, hey, how do I scale? But every person said the same exact thing is hire the best people, get rid of the people that are not doing it. And while I asked you, how are you finding your talent?
Oh yeah, it's tough. I mean, that is the right answer. What's also interesting is I feel like you can have a blog post that goes like how to get rich in 10 seconds or how to turn $1,000 into $10,000 and you get 1 million views. And then you do a blog post that's like how to hire incredible people. So you'll never have to work again. And people are like, nope, uninterested. Like it's not,
wow.
It's not popular for people to hear the truth, which is that you'll never be generationally wealthy without understanding how to lead people. And this was hard for me because I'm not a natural leader. I mean, you heard my response. I was like 30, 60, 90 fired, like that's not very empathetic. And so it took me a lot to really, I have to create processes around, okay, how do I really get to know this person? And I have to have them take personality tests so I could see what actually matters with them. Because I want to give everybody more money if they win and more freedom if they win, because that's what I want. I want more money, more freedom. So I think everybody wants more money, more freedom. Not true. A lot of people want, more encouragement. A lot of people want more experiences, not just money. They want respect. They want to be, given the employee of the week stuff that I couldn't care less. You could forget my name and pay me well, But the way that we hire and recruit is so interesting lately. It's been a big focus in media. In finance, it was so easy for me because I was like, we have a great culture and most finance cultures are awful, maybe even like a little toxic. We, at the time, I think we were one of the only companies, my company was, that was 100%, almost 100% Hispanics and women. And I wasn't doing that to keep the white man out, but I was doing it because we were covering Latin America. And so it was really easy to target our perfect employee. It was like, you speak Spanish, you don't, gone. And are you into working with 80% women or not? Meaning you're usually probably women. And so it was really easy to hire back then. Now in the media business, man, we have to have a lot of really different types of humans together. And so the way we've been trying to talk about it is to show people how fun it is to get to work in this industry. I mean, I'm sure you both are the same, but like I had an editor in India want to come on full time for me. He was a young hustler, great kid, super smart, he'll do well. But I was like, all right, well, what do you want to make, to come on full-time hiring? And he's like, just about like $175,000 a year. And I was like, this is hysterical. You're 18 years old, you live in India, and you're an editor. Like, it's not going to happen. But once we started talking to the culture of people about like, do you know what it's like that we make TikToks and Instagrams for a living? Like, go work at Wall Street for 1 month and you won't ever want to go back again. And so the biggest way we recruit right now is I like to hire from people in industries that have been pretty miserable. Like, I mean, we probably have friends that all do this, but have you been like a Keller Williams new agent? Shoot me in the face. Like, it's such a hard job.
Yeah.
And so now I'm like, I want to hire them. I want to hire ex finance. I want to hire ex McKinsey. And I want to hire people who have done some hard things before. And then they come to our world and they're like, this is a magic unicorn land.
And I'm guessing you just have some really good recruiting companies that help you do that.
We don't. We put
wow.
It's basically all. No, I've never really had. Finance has great recruiting companies actually, because it's like an automaton you kind of need. We don't use any recruiters. It's all based on social and our website and personalized outreach. I'm really big on, we are hiring a community manager right now, and my team was having a tough time doing it. And I'm like, I'm going to find you a community manager in 20 minutes, and then I never want to hear about this again. And so I get onto LinkedIn and I type community manager in, and there's 100 screens that come up, and I ping 25 of them. And out of the 25, 10 respond. 3 are really incredible candidates, and we chose 1. I'm like, why are you guys not doing this every time? This is not rocket science. So yeah, I don't think it's as hard as we have to make it out to be. It's just that we probably hired leaders who haven't hired a ton of people. And so then they tell us they can't find people, but I have to go back and check their processes. Like, do you actually have a process to find people? Because I think you're just waiting for them to come to you.
I think that's the hardest part about being like a small business owner. Cause like, even for us, like we've struggled hiring people. So it's like, it's really difficult to know what to look for in a candidate and like where to go. So how did you like hone in on this? Like, it's like a muscle, I guess. You work it just like anything else, and then you get better and better. What's kind of your advice to like small business people who are having those challenges and hiring the right talent?
If you're having a hard time finding talent, I think you're probably not actually spending very much time trying to find talent. It's a really tough.
That's probably the right answer.
To say out loud.
Yeah.
And
I think a lot of us are lazy.
I've fallen into this. Well, you're not lazy, you're busy. You're busy and you have a billion priorities. And small businesses never make enough money, and there's always something breaking or burning. And so those things go to the wayside because they're not breaking or burning. They're just like something that you have to fill. But what I found is the release that you get from hiring is so huge when done well that I prioritize it like a workout. It's on my calendar. If you were to look at my calendar right now, every single day, a portion of my day is find the best people. And so that might mean that if I don't have any hiring spots, I'm just connecting with other people in the industry that could be a source for me. It might mean I'm doing a collab, but I want to mention that I'm like on this podcast. I think I've mentioned 2 roles already that we're hiring for. So I would, if you're struggling to hire, I'd say, keep yourself honest, track how much time you're actually spending. Because if you're spending 7 hours a week on it because you block or let's say 5 hours a week on it, then there's like a next level we could do. But I bet you're not spending 5 hours a week. Unless, call me a liar. Do you think you're spending that much time on it per week?
Definitely not. No, you hit the nail on the head, just because like when I say lazy, I mean like, yes, you're right. We're like, oh, we're too busy. Okay, that person will work. Just plug them in and let's go.
Yeah, you're not spending any time, and then it's okay, we got to get somebody, just throw them in there, and that's why I love that perspective. Question for you, I'm fascinated on this answer. What is the person that you've hired that was changed your, I don't know, change your business? Like, I have a friend, and she's really big in one industry, and she hired a COO. And I was like, and she's like, you might even know who she is, but she's like, she hired a COO, and she's like, and I noticed her life change on social. I go, what changed? She goes, Kenny, I hired a COO, and she's like running my businesses. And she goes, I finally have a life after 10 years. And I'm like, okay, so what was that one person for you? You're like, okay, I can build things, I can do things, and like, gosh, they can help me do that.
Yeah. I have controversial advice that I don't know if I've ever said out loud, which is, I think most of us who are making, let's just say people who are making multiple 6 figures, probably doesn't make sense at $100,000, but once you're making a couple $100,000, it might make sense. And that is, your first hire shouldn't be an assistant. It should be a COO or a chief of staff. because what happens is you go too small. You go to these virtual assistant companies, you buy, you buy a package for $1,200 a month, but then the amount of management you have to do for a $1,200 a month talent is incredibly difficult. As opposed to my biggest unlock was probably my very first business where I ran it. I hired a COO, April, and I'm not that detail oriented, actually. I'm pretty good at frameworks and keeping other people detail oriented, but if I'm in charge of the spreadsheet, we're all in trouble. And so April was a huge unlock for me because she like Marie Kondo's on the weekend for fun. She's just like an organized weirdo. And so loves it. And then I am this nut that's out there like, we're going to launch this project. We're going to do this. And she kind of like reels me in, make sure we actually do the things. And so that was probably my biggest unlock. I have Chris at this company. I had Nikki at another one. So I almost always my first hire is, you can call it a chief of staff, then you don't have that big of a title, or you could call it a head of operations or an operations manager. Title creep is really important too. I accidentally have many times in businesses hired somebody, called them a COO. They were not a COO. They were a head of ops or an operations manager. So that could also be one of your first hires, because a COO probably costs you a good one, 100K a year, 125K with upside. An operations manager could be like 60 to 80K. The most important thing is just they've done it before somehow, somewhere.
And that person you could be finding, again, spend time on LinkedIn, start researching, start reaching out, and just do it yourself. That's the best. I mean, that's kind of,
I think so.
That's an important role.
And for you guys, I mean, I like to steal if I can. So I would probably be trying to steal from, I have a no stealing against friends policy, but if there are companies that you respect that look like that they have good operations, I would go try to take from an already, then you have a proven talent as opposed to a potential talent. And I always try to get a proven talent.
Yeah. And you said, I wanted to ask you something because Krystle was literally bringing this up. The other day, you said you have financial Fridays where you review your financials. And Krystle was like saying there, she goes, how many, like we're talking about owners of apartment buildings, like they don't even review their financials ever, or do they even understand their financials or know what they're looking at? And so we were just like, remember, we were just having this conversation because we were just like, she's like, maybe I should start reviewing my financials like live on Instagram or something. And so people know what the heck to look for. And so one of the biggest of small business owners is they're like, oh, I don't know anything. So can you walk through like your process of like why it's important and how you review and just kind of like what your Friday looks like? Cause I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah. I actually stole it from a real estate guy, Matt Atchison, if you know him. But anyway, so I had started compiling a pretty decent portfolio. I think I had 5 or 6 businesses at this time. And I wanted to grow a little bit more, but I was realizing that my cash flow had so much variance in it. One month would be a lot, next month would be half, and I couldn't figure out why. And so I was talking to Matt about it, and he's like, well, how often do you look at it? I'm like, well, like once a month, 15 days after the end of the month, typically when they get me the financials. And he's like, well, if you want to fix it, like you've got to put more attention on it. Where your attention goes, sort of the cash flow comes. And so every single Friday, I actually right after this call, so that'll be riveting, but I usually have a 2-hour segment of time. This week, my tax guy is actually on there, but where I review the financials of the business that all roll up into this big scoreboard or scorecard. So I can see pretty easily across all businesses, red, yellow, green, on goals and expectations for each business. And then I can click in. So if I see one that's yellow or red, then I just click into it and I can drill down into the individualized business. And it's super easy for you to have like my first accountant put this together for me. I think he cost me about $1,000 a month. And so every single week he would put together, it's called a rolling 13-week cash flow. And he would put this cash flow statement and then the income that the company had each week. And that's pretty much all I do. So I look at it and then, then I probably am annoying on Friday evening on Slack to the CEOs of the business. Like, what are we down here? What's happening here? And then each week I have one-on-ones with the active portfolio companies, not all of them anymore. They don't all need it. And that's when there's a set one-on-one doc we have every single week with sort of the KPIs broken down. And so I'll put my notes like, wow, sales are down in this one and expenses are up. And so then they can take time. I'll send them that sheet this Friday. And then when our one-on-one on Monday or Wednesday happens, they better have an answer for me.
Oh, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was a big unlock, actually, not to speak for 72 years, but a good friend of mine, Jordan, ran marketing at well, he was the CEO of the Hustle. And then he ran marketing in the podcast network at HubSpot. And he's a consultant that I paid, and I pay him each month. And he helped me redo my one-on-one sheets, because one of the other things that's annoying, you know how you bring people in for one-on-ones from your team and you're running the meeting and you're getting everything ready? I had done that for 15 years. And then he was like, whoa. How many I'm like, yeah, I have like 7 a week. I got to do the prep for. He's like, no. They do the prep. You give them the framework. They prep all the meeting stuff for you. They come prepared to you. They send it to you the night before. You look at it. If it's not filled out, you cancel the meeting and tell them to reschedule the meeting with a longer meeting. And you train them to brief you, just like the president. And I was like, I'm the president? Okay, this sounds great.
That's awesome.
And that's how we do it.
Okay,
that's
cool.
great advice.
Wow, you have, I mean, so many good nuggets here. One thing that I was reading about you, and I actually saw today because I was recapping, and I remember this about you, because I'm actually love it, is email, your newsletter. And so people, so we do real estate financing and we invest, and obviously we do kind of the media stuff. And so one of the things, it's amazing. The top realtors, I say, they love email, like the Ryan Turner stuff. They make more money off email than everything else, and nobody really gets that. And so I wanted to ask you about your newsletter. I know you love writing and journaling. And actually, I'm a terrible writer, but what I love to do is I started loving to do data and stuff, and I'm spending more and more time on content. And this one over here, just make sure it looks good and sounds good. But why is that important to you? But why is that so impactful? And I feel like people are missing this in their businesses, like big time.
Yeah, it's huge. It's something that I love to talk about, and it's another thing that nobody cares about, which I find hysterical. Everybody wants to hear how to go viral on Instagram, and it's like Instagram has a 1.5% conversion on average versus your entire, not on average, 1.5% for like the players. Like really good Instagram accounts can convert at 1.5% level. Like the Kardashians theoretically have conversion levels of 3%. And so when you think about that, that's incredibly low. Whereas my newsletter conversion percentage is more like 10 or 15%, because it's an owned audience. I get to go into their inbox every single week. Facebook and Instagram don't tell me that, this person's not going to see it or this person is. I get to be the judge of that. And email is still a little bit of a trust, because you don't follow that many email accounts. You might follow, I mean, gosh, I don't know. I probably have 500 people I follow on Instagram. I certainly do not sign up for 500 newsletters. And so it's a really powerful medium that is owned, not rented. And I think more entrepreneurs and people in general should just be building their list, because, for instance, I think TikTok is gone in 5 years. I think that platform will not exist. I think YouTube will take over that platform. And how many people's businesses were totally reliant on it, just like Snapchat, just like Facebook. And so I think it's a really big problem to only build on one platform and one you don't own.
Yeah. What is, so I know but I would ask you, because I love email. We do 3 a week. People go, isn't that too much? I go, no, not to us. But what is some of your tips, tricks, or like, how are you finding to get more people to be engaged? Like, what do you do? Because I know you love it, and I do too. And I was just wondering, like, what are you doing to like move the needle, or what have you done?
Do you want to get more subscribers? Is that the goal?
Yeah, that would be one for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's such a fun game. First of all, if you're serious about it, you should hire a growth marketer with an emphasis on email subscribers. I really believe in the beginning, before you've created structure around new things that are really important to you, you have to have one person who has a big outsized win or a big outsized loss if you don't hit your goals. And so we have one person who is in charge of newsletter growth. Like, they live and die by those numbers every single week. And when we didn't have that, I just found that nobody was paying attention. It was like, not my baby, not my problem. And so that would be the very first thing. They don't have to be expensive. You could even do them on like a consulting basis, but they should understand how to use ads to get to your newsletter. They should understand how to use collaborations. They should understand how to use lead magnets in your socials to get to your newsletter. And most of them will just be better than the average person if you just try to hire somebody and tell them to grow your newsletter. So that's first. It's always who, not how. Then the second thing is I like to do a like sort of a 5-to-1 value ratio. So like if I'm posting on Instagram, you'll see 5 posts, no ask, or really to 1 post.
Jab, 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 right hook.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Jab, 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 right hook. Yeah,
That's
I guess I do more than
Gary
he
V,
does.
but
Yeah.
Gary V, yeah, kind of.
Yeah. And so on that 5th one, I like to have a lead magnet every single time. And the ask is still me giving something away, but I get their emails. And so really good lead magnets are what drove the Hustle and Morning Brew to millions of subscribers in the beginning. I think it's the most powerful way.
That's nice. Yeah. I mean, I like that you're in the email. I think it's so underrated. And the people, there's people I know that have a really good email. They just laugh because they're just making a lot of money off it and they're crushing it. And people are just kind of like missing out big time.
I think that's right.
So we love real estate and we're big on cash flow. That's why we buy it. Obviously, there's appreciation stuff. And I know we talked about the business, but you're buying businesses. But like you said, is these businesses, you buy them and it's like annuity. They're cash flow, right? I'm guessing you really are in love with the cash flow. Is that why you buy them? Or is it more like you're in love with you call them the boring businesses? I was just kind of what really drove you to go to the small business? Like, what is it about it?
Yeah, it certainly started for cash flow. It was a very selfish pursuit to begin. I was like, I want freedom and I don't want to trade my time for money. Those are things we say a lot now. Back then, I don't know if that was as much of a public sentiment. So I really just wanted to, I don't ever want to have to work from the man. If I don't want to show up on Friday, I don't want to have to. And I want to be able to have multiple income streams because what if one of them goes sideways and I don't like risk? So I don't want to be broke ever. I don't want to hustle and have to sleep on the floor or a couch or all the stuff that people talk about. I'm like, I wanted to like sleep on a nice bed and go to the Ritz sometimes. And so in order to do that, I was like, I'll work 3 jobs because I'm too scared to just bet it all on one thing. And I think the average person is really done a huge disservice by the people who say, go all in on your one thing, go big or go home. The average person wants to take care of their kids. They want to be able to be there at soccer practice. They want to join an adult softball league. And they don't want to build Tesla or SpaceX and live Elon's life. Like they don't want it. And so I started small business because I wanted that. I wanted that same thing. I want freedom, diversification, management of risk so that I can live my life. And then I started kind of falling in love with the small business ecosystem because I'm sure you guys saw it too. We were all in San Diego at the time. During COVID, when the world shut down, I thought it was criminal what happened to small businesses.
Oh, yeah.
And I thought it was criminal what was allowed for big businesses. Why is the corner store shut down, but Target's open? It makes no sense from a scientific perspective or from an equality perspective. And so I had made a decent amount of money by then and thought, if I'm going to put my money anywhere, it's going to be in things that equal more freedom for more of us. And the best protection against freedom is diversification. It's not having the power in the hands of the few. So that's why I continue to invest in small businesses, even though monetarily I probably don't need to anymore, is because I don't want any more Starbucks or Walmarts than we already have. I'd like a little corner coffee shop. Thank you very much. And so I think if more humans did that, we'd be better off. And in real estate, the same thing. I love small to medium-sized real estate entrepreneurs because guess what happens when we have a 2007 or 2008, 2009 BlackRock that owns a giant portfolio, fire sales, all of them, creates a ton of chaos in the system, and a lot of people lose their livelihoods. But when you have a lot of small owners, you just have diversified risk and it doesn't happen as much. And so that's my thought for small businesses. It's just a better thing to do if you have money for the world that you want to live in.
I like that. I like that.
Yeah.
So how are you obviously have a ton of stuff going on. And I love to always ask, like, how in the hell did you keep all this together? Because a lot of people do, I think, as we grow and get more things and add, which is fun, you're trying to keep, I'm a parent. I need some sanity. I need to go on vacation. I need a life. I don't want to be Elon Musk where I'm sleeping under the office table at SpaceX or wherever the hell he was doing. How do you keep it all together?
Yeah, probably ask my husband if I always keep it together. But Chris said something. Chris is my husband. He said something to me that stuck with me probably about a year ago. And he said, well, it'll never be as simple as it is today again. Like, we don't have kids. Our businesses aren't getting smaller. We're not getting any younger and with less health issues. Like, it will never be simpler. And so what that made me realize is that every additional thing I take on becomes a weight I have to carry. And at a certain point, you really have to think about, do you want to keep adding those weights? So the biggest way, in my opinion, that I manage it all is saying no to a lot. It's really uncomfortable. I have a lot of friends or acquaintances that I just say, like, let's grab dinner, let's hang out. And I'm like, it's just not going to happen this year. I have priorities. There's kind of big ones. And, I don't do dinners during the week unless there's like something really special going on. And so I have a lot of these rules that basically allow me to focus on the stuff I really care about and not end up in a world of shoulds. And I think you all have probably felt this too, but the bigger you get, the more demands on your time and the more people think that they have a right to it. And the people that you really love suffer because you try to be a lot of things to a lot of people. And I did that for a minute and then I stopped. But it's one of the hardest things that I struggle with. It's not even that the businesses are hard to manage. It's managing the people and then managing relationships in a way that balances the two. And I'm not perfect at it, but my favorite word is no lately.
I love that. Cause I also think too, as grow, like you start to feel like you almost owe it to those people to meet with them and to network and to grow the relationship. So it's almost like you feel like you have to, but you don't.
No. Who was it that wrote that book about the Pacific Northwest? I think her name was Cheryl Strayed, something like that. Strayed, that wrote the book about hiking the Pacific Northwest that got turned into the movie with Reese Witherspoon. And it became this cult phenomenon. And she would get all of these people reaching out to her asking for, coffee or just a pick her brain session. And she had this line that I loved. She said, I'd love to meet with you. I can't right now, given the priorities that I have on my plate, but I can promise you this. The best of me is what I already gave you in that book. And then she'd sign off. And so what I realized for that is, like, the best of me, I try to give to the most people. So I create a lot of content because I'm saying that my best ideas are not to be had one-on-one over coffee. They're to be had in the YouTube videos that we spend tens of hours creating, or in my newsletter. And if you were to ask me for this one-off thing that only you get, then that 1 hour cannot be dedicated to the 100 million people that watch our stuff on a monthly basis. And so if you think about it that way, it's almost slightly selfish for you to go do all of these individual one-on-ones as opposed to give it to as many humans as you possibly can. And at least that's how I sleep better at night about it.
Good way to look at it.
It's funny you say that, because I was going to ask you next about your speaking and your courses and how you're teaching people. Is we are working on a course, and that's one of the things. And so we realize, like, we're just constantly like giving our time away for free and teaching. And somebody's like, I go, look, I could meet with you 10 times, but the reason why I'm doing a course is I'm going to put so much into it that I can't even teach it to you, because it's like you said, I'm putting it all in. That's why you just got to take it and go. Like, and I think people go, well, can't you just do it for free? Tell me. I'm like, no, I can't. And I'm thinking, I was telling Krystle, you can't,
No, you really
and so
can't.
that's why I was going to ask you. I know you have a lot going on. I think, are you doing courses? I know, speaking, engagement, like, what do you love to do, but what are you up to these days when it comes to all that stuff?
Yeah. You really have to have your frameworks of what matters to you. So I'm in the middle of writing a book right now.
Cool.
And if I looked at the book from a pure monetary standpoint, not the best thing to be doing. I'm not going to make bajillions on the book. Most likely. It's probably not Harry Potter level to talk about buying small businesses. Like, I don't think that's as applicable. So if I was just wanting to make money, I wouldn't write the book. But the idea for the book is, then I can say to every single human who wants information on this, you can buy it for whatever you buy a book for, $15. I don't know. And the reason why I think it's really important that somebody buys information is it's skin in the game. You know, my friend Alex, he sells his book for like 99 cents. And I think that's cool. But I think the value that you place on things really matters, actually. And when you give a book away for 99 cents, then you inherently say this book is not worth 15, it's worth 99 cents. And you inherently also say, you know, if you're going to buy a book for $15, especially when I was younger, like that was meaningful for me. It was like, I'm going to buy this when I'm ready to take action on it. And I want more humans that want to take action. So I actually really believe in making people pay for things. And I don't make them exorbitantly expensive, but there's a ton of research that shows if they don't pay for things, they won't value it. And how many times have you felt this when you go to a coffee with somebody, you tell them everything, you check back in 3 or 6 months, you're like, did you implement anything I said? And they're like, yeah, no, I've also got this new idea now that I'm going to go do this. And you're like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
And so I think it's really smart. You guys are building a course. I think everybody has a course in them. Like my friend has an amazing garden. I wish she'd build a course on that because I murder everything. And so I think it's really important. And it's a cheat code for your time and everybody else's.
Yeah, we've been talking about that, and all the people I talked to, they're like, you want to go high level with it because if people will pay, people will play, and they'll do it. If
people who pay attention.
Yeah, people will pay attention.
Ooh,
if they
that's a
don't,
good
they
line.
don't. Yeah. So are you doing a lot of speaking this year, or like are you kind of chilling a little bit more? Because I feel like a lot of people have COVID. It's like, you know, our buddy Dan Fleischer. I'm like, Dan, how many freaking stages do you go on? Like he's a madman. But some people are they're like, I'm burnt out, I'm tired, I don't want to do them, you know. So
yeah, he does do a lot of speaking events. I definitely don't do that much. I probably do like one every other month, and I'm pretty thoughtful on which ones I say yes to. The only time that I'll deviate from that is if it's a really close friend that's asking me to speak, I'll go do it. But I have this sickness where if I'm going to go give a speech, I have to spend a bunch of time prepping it. I have to practice it a ton. All these years later, like I just can't go up there and wing it. It makes me feel like I'm giving them a disservice. So I'm thoughtful on how many I say yes to. And then in that same vein, I want to create big things where you do it once and the ripples are felt continuously. And speeches are the opposite of that. You do it once and it dies. And I guess you could film it and put it on your YouTube channel so it didn't die. But I want to build more things where people can touch it continuously, both in business and in life. And so I've asked myself that question a lot. Like, why am I doing a ton of speaking? And they can't pay you enough money for it to be really worth it when you can build big businesses. At a certain point, it's literally not feasible for an event manager, which is like kind of a cool thing to have happen too.
That's cool. That's cool. I know we could probably talk to you forever because there's so many things to talk about, but before we let you go, 2 more things. One is obviously you're all over the place. If nobody's ever heard of you, they're apparently like living under a rock, but where is the best place for somebody to find you, learn more about you, what you do, and you know, whether they want to buy your book, get on your newsletter?
I think probably the best, Codie Sanchez on Instagram is maybe most accessible. That's CODIE. And then contrarianthinking.co is our newsletter. And, you know, free stuff all over both of those. And you can get everything you need to buy a business just by watching along if you want to.
That's good. And so we always ask the question to everybody, the same question. What's your definition of generational wealth?
Originally, it was $100 million. I don't know why. It was like, I want 100 million, not as a multiple of my businesses. Like I want cash. I want like liquid investments, and I want it to be $100 million. That is a totally arbitrary, in no sense of the word, like reasonable number for generational wealth. But that was sort of just the metric for a long time. Now I think my definition of generational wealth would be more along the lines of, can I support myself, my family, and my like immediate following generation? So like, I don't need to build enough wealth where they and like their children's children and their grandchildren all have enough money, but I'd like for my kids to be at least taken care of. I don't think I'd give it all to them. They'd have to earn it. Maybe we'll make them do a treasure hunt, but I would like to be able to take care of them and my family. And so I suppose at this point we've sort of hit that amount. And then I need to do some fun stuff. I hope they're not listening, but like my dad wants this one car. I should buy it for him. Like my mom wants a little house on the beach. And so I think at one point it's being able to do stuff like that and not have a scarcity mindset.
That's really cool. It's funny how you say that though, because I think like everyone's idea of generational wealth changes as you start actually building something. So when it's so far away, you're like $100 million. Yes, that sounds amazing. And then as you start building, you're like, oh, it's a little bit more complex than just that.
It is. Wait, I have a question for you too. How did you two start doing the podcast sort of together? And how is it creating content, with your human?
Well, it's kind of funny because,
Funny story, yeah.
Well, I always tease that Kenny and I like that, like this is like an arranged marriage. My mom, kind of put us together and like all she wanted was tall blonde grandchildren. She got one.
I'm 6'7", so you can't tell here.
You look tall.
So we literally like, I've never lived with anybody in my life, but we moved in after 2 months, started working together after like 3 months. And then we've literally just done everything in our lives together. So like when COVID hit and everybody was like wanting to divorce their like spouse because they were spending too much time together, I was like, oh, this is just like the same thing that we've always been doing. So we've always worked together. It was honestly my dream always to like, I want my partner to be like my actual partner in life, not just in my home and family. So we've always done everything together.
Oh, I love that. That's so cool. Well, it's rare, so it's really neat to see.
It is 15 years how we've been together, married about 8. So that's what we said is how people like, how do you do it? I'm like, well, we had a counselor and we're very proactive about it. Like, so we're like, if we can't get through a topic, not that it's like we're good at fighting, I guess you say, but we're dealing with it. But I'm like, if it's gonna drag on for longer, like we're talking days, I'm like, cool, call Doug, because I'm like the type, I get it off my shoulders. If not, like I cannot live in that. So we like to fix things quickly. Dragging on, I see couples for months and months still talking, like that is just not that's terrible.
Also at like big stages in your life, like after kid 1, after kid 2, like family issues, like these are the things that you go to a counselor for, so that you're not just going in circles. Like most people that can't get along, it's because they just keep going in circles.
Oh,
but how we ended up doing this is we just worked. And then we sold a property management business, and then that was a beast, and sold it and got out of that. And then we kind of like, we want to start a family, but I was like, hey, we start doing this like marketing thing. And I don't know what it is. So she goes, you ever heard of this guy, Gary Vee? And I said, no. And then 4 months later, I was in his office in New York at a 4D dive. And he's like, what are you doing here? I go, I don't know. He goes, what is fucking answers that? I go, well, I just saw this stuff I didn't realize. Like, well, go back and give it all away. I go, how do you do that? He goes, just go fucking do it. I go, okay. And we came back and was a podcast
for that advice, by the way.
Yeah, it was like podcast, this and that. And then it's evolved. And I think this whole thing is as much as you put time and focus. So we're probably not putting as much energy and time as like you are, but I think I'm starting to really enjoy it in the content. So I'm figuring out the way, so it's hard though. It's a lot of work.
Oh, no kidding. I don't have a podcast yet for that reason. I'm like, I can only do so many things at once, but we'll do it eventually.
Fun, but you get to meet people all the way, but it is cool because like we get time here with you and we've had a lot of great people and we had this connection, but it's really cool to like, just have this connection with people. Like you said, we connect with other people, but how often do you like, we're getting your time, right? Which is very valuable, which I really appreciate.
The one-on-one time you wouldn't even give a friend. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So like, that's pretty cool.
True.
And I get to give this. And so we've obviously gotten better asking the questions, but it's cool because we get to ask you questions and maybe like, it's always the generational wealth when people like the answers we have, I should just replay the 200. It's amazing. The different answers and people are like,
oh, interesting.
Holy smokes. I've never thought of that. And they're like on the spot, they got to answer or something like that.
I love that. Well, it's really cool. Yeah. I think, do you take like an hour after the ends of podcasts and like integrate ideas that you want to steal? Because I think that would make it more valuable for me. If I took like an hour at the end, it was like, okay, hiring 3 people. These people are fired. Whatever. Do you do that? For
sure. Because I think like even Krystle is very picky, I think, who she listens to, because it's like, well, have you done it? Not done it? There's so many people. It's like, so I think the person she's like, hired as a coach now, it's like just level up, but you're doing what I want to do, And so I think it's the same thing as, of course, we've learned so much or just a podcast.
I can tell you the one thing, after this podcast with you, Kenny's going to be like, I told you so. We need to hire a COO. Like this is the hire we're going to make.
I've literally been saying, I've literally been walking around saying this, like but it is hard to find. But that's for, and I got that too. It's Alex Hormozy. He said, just go hire the best and they'll hire everybody else. Why are you hiring me here to get, it's like, and a couple things like he said,
100%. Well, I appreciate you guys having me. Thanks for letting me interrogate you, but right back.
I love it. Yeah. Thank you so much. This is really cool. I'm so glad that we got to talk with you. And you had so many good things to say. So
yeah, honestly, it would be, definitely. You'd go for hours with you. We could be like a Joe Rogan 5 hours.
Oh God. Maybe if we had like whiskey and stuff.
No, that's what I'm saying. You got to do it like that. Yeah.
We'll hang out when I come back out to San Diego. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, that'll be fun. Yeah, we love it.
All right, you too.
Well, have a great day.
Bye.
Happy Financial Friday.
Okay, bye. Yeah, right. Bye.